everybody. How you doing? My name is Jim Grisanzio, and I'm the host of the Duke's Corner podcast at Oracle, and I'm in Java Developer Relations. And I just flew in from Japan, so I'm very tired, but I did bring some presents. I brought 5 Java t-shirts. I have 3 large and 2 medium. So I don't have any questions, but who would like one? Is it medium? How about a medium? Large? You look at large?
I can take a medium if you have one.
Medium? Okay, yeah. So I got large right here.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. Medium.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, who else wanted a medium? You want large? Large. We'll get the back row too. Large. Anybody in the back? Large? Large. Last large. Oh, good. One medium? Medium? Okay, see if I can get that. Oh, sorry. Okay, that's will actually make my suitcase a little lighter going back. Yeah, I was very impressed with that, opening out there. That's some style. So that was actually really, really nice. So I do developer relations at Oracle. I've been doing this for a long time, 20 years, over 20 years actually. You'll see this from my slides. I'm going to show some pictures from basically going back to Sun in almost 2000. I build communities and I profile developers. That's really all I do. And I'm going to show you basically what I've learned, about contributing. Because what I've noticed about developers is that, FOSS developers anyway, open source developers, and particularly Java developers, is they understand this concept of contribution, and it always impressed me, and it's helped me, tremendously in my career. This is an image here. I'll explain some of the images, not all of them, because I'll run out of time, actually. This is an image at the Sun reunion in 2019, and obviously you should know, some of these guys, Gosling and Bill Joy and Andy Beckelsheim there. These guys built massive, communities, and to me, what's most interesting about this image is what you can't see is behind me. There's 1,000 people. Sun at this point was already dead for 10 years. This reunion, we put 1,000 people in the room with 100 executives 10 years after the company died. That's incredible to me. It shows to the testament of the guys on the screen there about building communities. So this is me when I was young. I'm 22 or so in this image, and that's my IDE. And so I was a builder, I was a developer. It's a very expensive IDE. It was not free, and it was not software, but it was a beautiful machine. I did this for many years until I got hurt and lost everything. But this is where I learned craft. This is where I learned, working with hackers and builders and makers and artists, And back then, I learned this just by, obviously, osmosis. All these years later now, obviously in software, you remind me of these guys then, of what you do. You use tools, right? You build things, and you create things. And this is where I learned a lot of actually what I do now. So no more about me. Let's move on to the opportunity with Java. A lot of times you hear people say Java is old and it's pejorative and stuff like that, and it's just so silly. I mean, we've got 29 years, next year's 30 years of continuous development, not only in the code, but in the community. Continuous development for 30 years. And, some of these numbers are obviously mind-boggling. 100 million, obviously, like 1 million certified developers, Java certified developers, 10 million developers, number 1 language, billions of JVMs. I mean, these numbers are too big for me, obviously, to quantify or even to understand. But when I look at it, the only thing I see here is opportunity, if we know what to do. There's a large ecosystem there, and how can we take advantage of that? And the image in the background is from Japan. Obviously, that's where I live now, and the Japan user group is where I contribute. And they're eating sushi at the conference ending party here. I got a scratchy throat, hope it doesn't come through here. So my value proposition is very simple. If you want to take advantage of this huge opportunity we have to do a few things. And this is what I've learned from developers. So it's a little bit of me, but a little bit of what I've learned. We got to master some skills. We got to contribute to communities and build our own networks. Okay, and that process creates value for everyone involved. And it's most important. It creates value at 3 levels. Okay, you as a developer, the community benefits as well. Your company also benefits. All 3, right? So I'm going to be talking about that more in detail here. This is an image from the Tokyo Linux user group where I used to contribute. I was the VP there actually for a few years, and we had a meeting recently. So that's it there. So I base a lot of my opinions not only on the construction experience I had when I was young, but also on this. I've interviewed hundreds of developers just like you from many different communities and technologies. Right now, it's been exclusively since 22 just on Java, and but I've covered things like database, Oracle database, MySQL, Graal, and obviously Linux. But some of the quotes here, and I have hundreds of quotes. I'll just share some of the quotes here, like Java is my superpower from Shirish Pratha in Pittsburgh. This is actually a common thing that developers say to me in this podcast. Developers are superheroes from Mala Gupta in India. Again, a very common thing because they're working with very advanced tools and technologies and they can do incredible things. Just one engineer, I was struck when I worked in Solaris at Sun, how one engineer with one tool could do so much. It was just incredible. It just reminded me of sitting on my cat, when I was young in New York. That feeling of mastery from Dervish here, actually here in Norway. He wanted to master his technology. Again, a very common quote that people say. Java is a marvel of engineering from Bert Young Scriver. Again, very, very common. Advanced technology. Think about some of these things when someone says Java's old. It's silly, okay? Everything changed from Jonathan Villa. He said this actually to me when he realized that there was a community outside the firewall. He was an engineer working strictly inside the firewall on Java, and he realized that there was a community outside, and he interacted with them, and he solved some problems, and it changed his life completely. So the links at the bottom of the screen actually point. Actually, I'll show you a QR code at the end where you can get the slides. But the links at the bottom of the screen either support the slide or go for more information. There's about 50 links in this deck. These links here on this slide are specifically to the podcast with video, but mostly audio recently. So a lot of what I say here is based on these conversations. Also, I not only am doing the podcast, but for many years I was just a community manager, building communities. And so I've interacted with and built many, many communities over the years. And also in those interactions, I formed a lot of opinions that I'm going to talk about here. Construction, communities, obviously, they're not open source communities per se, but they are, communities, publishing and biohacking, open Solaris. Obviously, when I was at Sun, Java, NetBeans, Linux, lots of communities that I have participated in. And this here, I love this image because everyone's wearing the same shirt. This is this is Oracle Code 1 San Francisco in 2018. And we used to actually do this in Open Solaris Tour. We'd actually go to a conference and all wear the same shirts. So that I just thought that was really cool. So I would just encourage you to contribute to multiple communities as well, because you're going to see here throughout the deck that it's not just Java, it's not just Linux, it's not just MySQL, it's everything. Java happens to be leading, but that's okay. It's everything. This way. There we go. Okay, I also base, actually when I talk about networks and communities, a slight distinction I just wanted to point out. When I'm talking about a network, I'm talking about your personal network, the people that you know, the people that you trust, the people that you know by name. Like when you're doing a contribution, you have to work with people, processes and tools and people. That's your network. And community obviously is the massive larger community where there's thousands and thousands and sometimes millions of people. And in this image here in 2009 in Indonesia, I had this very same conversation with these kids. This was an open Solaris day in Indonesia. They're CS students, and all they wanted to know about was career. What do I do to get a job? And I said, start contributing now while you're in school, right? Form a user group, and you can connect to the larger community and things like that. So networks and communities, slightly different. So in terms of contributions, the most important thing, I believe, is that your contribution is your signal. Okay, when you come into a community, communities can be very big and noisy and messy, or they can be organized, but not so much. You need a way to communicate with somebody. Who's the leader? Is it really Linus that you want to talk to? Probably not. Or maybe there's somebody who's actually managing a project or actually integrating a code into a project that you're more familiar with. So your contribution is your signal. You send that to cut through the noise. Now, no one's said that to me, per se. It's just I've gleaned that from talking to so many people. And this is my friend, Sai Penamuno in India. He runs the All India Oracle user group, which is a massive, massive user group in India. And he talks constantly about contributions. And I've learned a lot from him. Oh, and in terms of contributions, source code from an engineering community is obviously valued, probably the highest, but anything could be a contribution. Bug reports, huge contribution. If you can find a bug and give a critical analysis and maybe offer some code, but even just finding the bug is a huge contribution. Blogs and videos and stuff are actually good contributions, whether they're technical or not. Some of the stuff that I do, actually everything that I do is non-technical. So really, everything is a contribution. And to take this to its extreme, just showing up is a contribution. And if you don't think that's true, just ask the guys in the pink here. This is the Java Japan user group, the cross-community conference just recently. And they got 500 people at this event. It was a free event. And they're managing the event. And I can assure you, they need people to come. If you ask any of the organizers here, they need people to come. Now, when you come to an event and you want to contribute, you don't just sit there, but you offer advice and suggestions, hallway conversations, things like that. Offer or just ask questions, right? Offer advice to people, offer to help. These things are all the first level of contribution. So literally you are a contribution. It's that first entry level. And actually the guy on the right of, actually that's, the guy in the t-shirt, the black t-shirt is George Saab. He's my SVP at Oracle. He runs the Java Platform Group. And the guy next to him on the right is Chihiro Ito, and he is a contributor to OpenJDK. So there's multiple contributors. Actually, there's like 12 contributors from the Japan Java user group to OpenJDK. Really, really interesting group. Okay, so you're a contribution. Now, if you're going to be contributing, the best place to contribute, obviously, is a free and open source software community or a project. This is an old image from 2004 in Portland at the O'Reilly OSCON conference. If anybody remember that, it was the thing back then. It was the premier open source conference. And in this image, these are all my friends. This image, there's 4 or 5 different communities represented: Linux and Apache and Open Solaris, and obviously Java with Bruno there, and Tim O'Reilly in the middle. Everybody mixes. And the benefit of open source projects is that there's many different community models and many different licensing strategies. There's many different engineering models and development models. Companies have open source program offices. There's lots of stuff, lots of opportunity, there. What I like most about it, there's lots of mentors, mentees, and there's expectation of contribution, right? And also of merit. So that's the best place if you're going to contribute. It is an open source project. while we're at it, the best place within the best places is Java, obviously. It's one of the largest communities in the world. And this is an image here I shot. This is the some of the leaders, the Jug leaders and the Java champions from some of them here in this room, actually, right now. So my teammates are in this room right now. And this is in Las Vegas. And just to focus on my team here for a minute, my team produces lots of content for you to learn about Java, but also contribute to Java. It's not only learning. You're not just a passive audience. So all the links on the bottom, there's 14 links on the bottom. Again, you get the PDF later and follow up. I'll just explain a couple of them in terms of learning. We have a website called dev.java. There's lots of tutorials there and content if you're learning Java. There's also a contribution process there where you can actually contribute to the website. And I was just working on my newsletter recently, and I noticed that one of the contributors to this website is a kid in high school. I couldn't believe it. Actually, I was going to ask you guys about this. I went to the website, and he's in high school. So just imagine his career, 4, 5, 6 years from now. He's already contributing to the premier open source project in the world, and he's in high school. So that's a very, very powerful experience. Hope to meet him someday. We got things like Java Playground, which is an app basically. It's on the web that you can explore the latest, all the latest features in Java. You don't have to download anything. And that link over on the left-hand side, Moved by Java, is just a 4-minute video. It's really great. If you haven't viewed it, it's really great because all it is quotes and interactions from leaders in the Java community, throughout Java's whole history about why they love two things: Java the technology and Java the community. Okay, and that's exactly what I talk about in my podcast. That's it: the community and the technology and the person, obviously. And there's lots of different ways to contribute. OpenJDK, there's a link there that goes to OpenJDK, which gives very comprehensive processes to contribute. And if you think you can't contribute there, there's actually individual contributors, not just from Oracle and Google and all these big companies. There are individuals right now who are contributing to OpenJDK. I know some of them. I'm not saying it's easy, okay? I'm not saying it's easy, but you can do it. There's a process there. There are mentors there. There are mailing lists there. All the infrastructure is there. And another really cool program is called the OpenJDK Quality Program, which is QE. So it's testing. So that's a massive contribution if you can test the OpenJDK builds and various FOSS software. So again, our team is producing content, and some of the guys are right here in this room. Videos, lots of videos, articulating all the different features of all the different releases, all the JEPs, news, things like that, all from a technical point of view that you can learn, okay? But you can also contribute, all right? And some of it's our team specifically on Java Developer Relations, and some of it, obviously, with OpenJDK is JPG, which is the larger engineering org. Now, if you're going to be contributing to any community, whether it's a tech community or something locally, I like to focus on meritocracy because it offers the most opportunity. Not saying this is a perfect process, but it is the culture of open source. Humans aren't perfect, and no community is going to be perfect. This is an image here from Hawaii. We ran an unconference a few years ago. The dude there in the pink shorts up front, he's Chris Thallinger. He's Java champion, and he ran the event. But we organized it specifically for multiple communities. Just scanning the image, I can see like 15 different communities represented in this. So as you approach a community and as you sort of figure out what you want to do, ask the question: is it based on is it based on merit? Do I have the opportunity to actually contribute? This is going to be very, very important a little bit later. Mentorship is a critical part of open source communities. This is Denise Cooper, a friend of mine from Sun, goes way back. She was involved in a lot of the early licensing and planning strategies for the open sourcing of Solaris and Java and NetBeans, a lot of the old Sun technologies that we still have today. She's very smart. She's a good friend of mine, and she was one of my core mentors. She knows pretty much everybody in the world, and that's a core feature of some of these people who are super networkers. They know everybody, but they're willing to engage with you. Okay, I wasn't special. I was just a new employee at Sun, but I was able to see in her the fact that she knew everybody, and I said, "Oh, I need to be friends with her." Because you can't do this stuff alone. It's too hard. Communities are they're too etherical. They're too messy. How do you figure out, what to do? It's not always specified in a contribution document. You need to be able to sit down with somebody with a cup of coffee and say, what do I do? Who do I call? Who's good? Who's not so good? What are the problems here? Because we're human beings, and there's politics, right? So mentors are very, very important. And so I would encourage you also to be a mentor. And I can see this on my own team. I've seen it in Java and Linux and Solaris, people acting as mentors, for young people. Or even older people who are new into the project. So age actually doesn't matter. Leadership is a great place. Leaders, they're a great place to find mentors. I define leadership slightly differently. It's not by title. It's by action. So in any open source community, there's lots of people who are acting. Okay, there's plenty of places that are at the edges of the projects that have really, really substantial people. Distributed leadership is where it's at. It's not necessarily what your title is, and certainly not necessarily that you're from a company. Okay, what matters is that you're qualified, you do the work, and that you're a good community steward. This is an image from the Community Leadership Summit. Jono Bacon there is on the left, sitting down. He's obviously from the Linux community. And in this image, I know there's one Java champion there, and there's a few JUG members from the local JUG there up in the Pacific Northwest. But everybody mixes. There's Linux, there's MySQL here, there's Java here, and I learned a lot, actually, from them about leadership and distributed networks. Now, assertion is really important here. I'm reminded about that by these two young engineers at Sun. These are two we really, to me, in China. And this is back during Open Solaris, and we just opened the code, and we ran our first engineering summit. It was all kernel developers, very few people like me. It was all engineers, and these two engineers from China, they came to Silicon Valley, and they had an issue to discuss with the kernel team. And I said, "You're going to bring this up in that meeting with those guys?" Because back then, China was very, very far away. It was Silicon Valley. That's where the action was, and we're going to do it here. But these guys, in this image, they had an issue that they needed to discuss. And we had an open session. There was 300 people there, and they stood up holding hands, just like they are here in this image, and they asked their questions. And I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen, Because, kernel developers aren't necessarily the most gentle of group. But they were very, very brave. And I kind of forget the issue. I think it was like a licensing issue, but this is a long time ago. It's 2008. But the point is, stand up. So obviously assert yourself. If you want to be a contributor, and there's great value in that, there's tremendous value in being a contributor to really any open source project, but you have to assert yourself. And a lot of developers are more shy, and it's hard to do. But if they can do it, speaking a second language and a bunch of kernel developers, we can do it, right? So, and I did a lot of work with them in China. I went to China 30 times working with these guys. Okay, initiative, obviously this is related to assertion. This is a very common scene in Japan. This is actually, this is the GraalVM team from Oracle, they came to Tokyo and they ran like a weekend, hands-on, seminar. So this is more of an organized event, but the point is it's a very common thing for developers to get together and teach each other. And they do this in Japan all the time. I was very surprised when I went there. It's like a Sunday, right? And they just, pick somebody in the community, from Amazon or Sun or Oracle or something. So they go to the office with their books and they teach each other, and actually do a lab. And this is phenomenal. That's a huge contribution. You're teaching your fellow developers. They're teaching you. You're learning. Your company is benefiting from all that free education. Sometimes our companies say, well, what's the benefit of going to a conference? Lots of education happens, but it also happens in informal sessions like this. And this was an incredible thing, a Sunday all day. And at the end, they drank beer, ate sushi, and it was great. We had a lot of fun. And so taking the initiative to do something on the weekend instead of watching this, the football game or something, but to go to an event that's really informal. It's not like this where it's very sexy and stuff. This is just in a conference room. Okay, you're just learning. So that initiative is very, very important. Okay, this is probably the most important slide, the next couple of slides. This is obviously James Gosling going back in 2008 in Tokyo. And performance versus success. So this actually is the articulation of this author here. The link is on the lower left of the slide. It's called The Formula, The Universal Laws of Success. If you've never heard of this guy, Albert Lazio Aberabase, he is a network scientist at Northeastern University in Boston, which is actually where I went. And he has this book, The Formula, which is really, really good. It's a lay book. Anybody can read it, but it's based on his own original research, and he's got a lot of it, He's certainly a big data guy. And basically, he draws the distinction between performance and success. Performance, he defines, is about you. That's how much code you can write. It's how long you can work. It's your education, how many hours you can work in the day. And that does drive your success, but only up to a point, because there are natural limits, right? But success is unbounded. Okay, performance is bounded, success is unbounded. And he separates these two with different mathematical algorithms that he actually talks about. Obviously, I'm not going to get that because the math, he says, is very, very different. But this is a critical, as soon as I read this, I said, oh my God, that's why we contribute. Okay? We contribute to a community, not only in the sense of cutting through the noise, it's a way, so it's our signal that we cut through the noise, but the results of our contribution can be tremendously more than we can do alone. And Gosling is a good, obviously he showed. He started it all, right? Him and his friends, sitting around in Menlo Park, and they wrote some code, and here we are now, all these years later, 30 years later. Okay, it was a heck of a contribution he did, huh? So we can't all be James Gosling or Linus Torvalds, but I have many friends in this community, in the Java community, who experience this process. When you contribute something of value to a community, and then over time that community grows, it's just like interest, right? It's just like money. It's the same thing. But it scales more than you can. Right? And this concept he articulates in this book really, really well. I strongly, strongly recommend it. And he actually has another concept here. He goes into 5 concepts in the book. This is just the second one, which I liked. Productivity. Again, he draws the distinction between productivity and innovation. It's not the same. And he separates them with different math. And he talks about, the fact that we always think the young are the most innovative. Silicon Valley startups or physicists who are young, they do all their work in their 20s and things. And that's true, but for a very, very small number of people. For regular people, for the masses of people like us, it's totally different. And Barabase actually has got 100 years of data, which is a lot of data. All scientists, all papers. That's a ton of data. And he shows that the more production in terms of your scientific career, and he follows several fields here, but he's just talking about science. The more production, the more papers you generate, the more chances you have something to stick, something to do very, very well. So the older people are not less innovative, but they are far, far less productive. And that makes sense. You have families, people get sick, things like that. You slow down, right? So there's a distinction there. Now, I read this and I was very happy because I'm a lot older, and I said, okay, so I'm not as stupid as I was when I was younger, right? So I mean, it's the same, but you have to be able to produce. And I'll talk a little bit about how you can mitigate that, a little bit later. And I was reminded of this concept of productivity here from these guys. Again, this is the Japan Java user group, some of the leaders, and I see in this, I see a couple of Java champions, and I see a couple of people who are on the JCP executive committee, and I see a couple of contributors to OpenJDK in one image from one user group. And the guy in the front in the gray is Yamamoto-san. He's getting his Duke's Choice Award, actually standing on my streaming stage there in that insert picture. Very productive group, the Japanese group. Really, really interesting. But they're not necessarily, as you grow, you're not necessarily less innovative. And it's a really, really interesting concept in the book. So as we think about contributions, it's always important to think about what's possible. This is Joey Ito, a friend of mine from Tokyo. That's a beautiful camera he has there, Hasselblad. So Jose, you like that camera? And I don't know if he has digital back on that, but I shot this image, just in a coffee shop with Joey and some friends. Joey's an incredible guy. I don't know if you've ever heard of him or if you know him, but he used to run the MIT Media Lab. He created Digital Garage in Japan. He was involved in the creation of Creative Commons. Right now he's a university president. He's an investor, these kinds of things. But he's also just a hacker, right? And that's what I like about him. And he taught me about thinking about what's possible in any situation, just sitting around having coffee. And he created, himself and some people in Japan, some essentially hackers, this thing called Safecast. It's the link on the lower left there. Citizen science. There we go. Citizen science for environmental radiation monitoring. It's a big deal in Japan when Fukushima blows up and the government can't find all the radiation that's spreading all over the place. So what happened was the hackers said, hey, we can help. We've got skills and talents. We got software developers. We got hardware developers. We can talk to the physicists in the universities, and we can come up with monitors. We can build them. Nobody knew what to do. Nobody knew how to do it, but we'll figure it out. What's possible? You all have advanced technical skills. So think in terms of when you're contributing to like a Java community, what's possible, right? Not only what is needed or what the community wants, but what is possible, maybe even in your local community. I know Java developers helped out, with the pandemic in terms of creating applications. This Safecast group is still going on, today, and they're monitoring radiation actually all over the world. So I learned a lot of that from Joey. This is obviously Linus Torvalds. I met him in Japan in 2018 and had a conversation with him after he was finishing with these T-shirt signings. And I told him that I spammed the Linux kernel mailing list. I actually sent the announcement of Open Solaris to the Linux kernel mailing list. It was by accident, but I'm on the Linux kernel mailing list. I told him that, and I told him about how I lost my project, Open Solaris. Son died, and Open Solaris was killed, and my career, that's it. It went to zero because everything was invested in that, right? Because it was a nascent community at the time. It was obviously small. And I told him about this story because at the time Linux and Open Solaris were fighting. Linus was attacking Open Solaris. We would fight back. We would say Linux is a toy, things like this. Silly little battles, Unix battles, which were going on for years and years. And he commented, he said, "Oh, I'm sorry, he won, I lost," kind of thing. But it was a really good conversation, and it was fun. Obviously it's years later. But the point is, platforms matter. All right? That's why I encourage people to contribute to multiple communities, or at least be involved in multiple communities, just because they're different. MySQL is not the same as Java. Linux is different. Perl, all these different communities are different. They have a different personality. So that's all. I just, when things blow up, occasionally, consider the platform, consider just kind of moving around a little bit. Oh, but just actually one more thing. I'll go back for 1 second. No, it's actually forward. Actually, it's here. It's on this slide here. That link on the right, on the bottom, it's called the Magnitude 9.1 Meltdown at Fukushima. This video, it's like a half an hour long. It's really, really good. It talks about how the engineers at the site managed all those problems. And you really get a sense that they had to manage the political situation with the Japanese government, but also the engineering situation that was happening at the site as Fukushima was blowing up as a result of the earthquake in 2011. I was in Tokyo at the time, and I didn't think I was going to live. I mean, that building, I was on the 28th floor of a high-rise. But this video here is incredible. It gets the engineering mindset of how you're solving problems under stress, under huge life and death stress here. And it really helped me to understand the value of sometimes things blow up, all right? And so that's life. Now, how do we mitigate things blowing up? Hopefully you're not going to be involved in a nuclear meltdown or an earthquake, things like that, but things do change. Life changes. It's just the nature of things. This is a friend of mine, Matthew Dons in Tokyo. He's just a self-taught hacker. He's contributed to multiple communities. And I learned a lot about learning from him. Okay, not about learning any specific topic, but just innovative learning techniques that have been around for 100 years that really aren't necessarily taught in school. Things like, active recall, spaced repetition, the gap effect, interleaving, testing, teaching. These are all techniques that people have been using for thousands of years, but they're not formalized. And, I tripped over them as an adult. I wish I knew about some of this stuff when I was in high school. I wouldn't have failed out, so many places. And the links across the bottom are all just links to, places, that articulate these concepts. But the book on the right is called Make It Stick, The Science of Successful Learning. Is probably the canonical book that has most of these techniques in one area. Because if we have to learn, and every developer I talk to says we sit there learning new things all the time, why not learn as efficiently as possible? One of the techniques is to go very, very deep. This is my friend Satoka in Japan. She's hacking on some hardware here at Tokyo Hackerspace. And I'm shooting her with a 50mm lens, so I'm sitting right there. I was there for like 5 minutes. I shot a whole bunch of images. She never looked up. She's focused very, very deeply. And so it just reminded me of this concept of deep work. There's actually a book out on deep work. It's a little older now by Cal Newport. But he draws the distinction between deep work and shallow work. So deep work is obviously like this. You're focused, on something that's hard for hours at a time. Okay, not just a short amount of time, a long time. And shallow work is answering emails, going to meetings, things like that. Both are necessary, but the things that actually get you promoted, the things that generate real value, are things that you can create using deep work, focused concentration. And again, every developer I know says this in one way or another. They have to concentrate, right? To concentrate for long periods of time. So in the bottom there, I have some resources for that, because if you want to contribute to a community, there's a lot of people out there are contributing. You want to contribute something of real value, something that will move the needle. It's not going to be something that you're going to create in a trivial way as you're answering email. Likely, it's something that you're going to create that has real innovation, something that you've been focusing on for a while. And this stuff is hard. This is my friend Ayana Yokota and Takashi Ito. This is at JavaOne in San Francisco. And again, the image, she's doing, she's a Java engineer, but she's doing some kind of a, karate thing at the community event. But what you can't see in the image is the thousands of people that are behind me. I'm taking this image and I look back and all these people. So she's on stage there. That must have been hard for her to do. But she bowled through it, right? So my advice is to embrace the hard. Sometimes things are hard. The Stoics knew this 2,000 years ago. There's only thousands of books written on it, right? Everybody knows this. But we have science now. You can look at things like the anterior mid-cyclic cortex in your brain. It's right in the middle of your brain, underneath your neocortex. And it grows when you do hard things that you don't want to do. It grows. And this is the essence of willpower. And sometimes it just takes brute force, okay? Just like this. And so then we have science now. You can look at the neuroscience in some of these things. So if you're going to contribute, go bold, go big. This is my friend Chris from Oracle, and he built that Raspberry Pi there. He had some friends. Obviously, there are multiple teams involved. It's 1,000 Raspberry Pi there. It's running really all of Oracle stuff. Java's on there, obviously. And big projects attract innovative and big people, okay? And so that's just some advice to go bold, right? And actually in the background there on the right, that's my streaming stage there at the conference. We streamed out about 60 or 70 interviews at that conference at that time. The links at the bottom are all videos that I did with Chris. One of them that Chris made has over 1 million views for that machine. Now, really what I'm talking about here is mastery. This is my old boss, Bonnie Corwin from Solaris. She was an engineer. She actually worked with Gosling before Java. And she was a great manager, and she taught us a lot about details, right? In terms of doing hard things, you have to master the details. And we would talk at length about these things. And the whole team followed her with this. And I'm not talking about being familiar with something. I'm talking about mastering something. So again, I hear this over and over and over again from developers like you. Health is one way to mitigate the fact that as you grow in life, you slow down, you get injuries, you have parents that are sick, you have kids that come along, it changes your life, you can't be as productive. Right? I was in Vietnam a few months ago, and I was at this conference, FOSS Asia. There were 5,000 people there. 4,000 of them were students. They all were this age, too. And so it was like a bunch of 20-year-olds walking around. But it was kind of cool to talk to them. Many of them were learning Java. But I just love the image because they're young and healthy. They're beautiful, right? And so health is a big deal. As you grow, as you age, to keep your health in order, nutrition, exercise, things like this, people laugh at it, but if you're like me, you've been in the hospital for years on end, you take that stuff seriously. And, like the glymphatic system in the brain, that was just discovered 12 years ago. They didn't know how the brain cleansed itself. All of memory consolidation happens at night, when you're sleeping. So these health issues are very, very important. So, because when we're contributing, this stuff can be stressful. So I'm going to finish up with some more voices in the community here. It's just some quotes outside of the podcast. This is at DevNexus in 2022. This is Sharth Chander. I worked for him at Oracle. He's sort of like Denise Cooper early on. He knows everybody in the community by name. He knows their birthdays. He knows everything. He's been around Java for a long time. Community is the most important pillar to the entire Java story. I buy that. Every developer tells me that. They talk about code, people, community, right? So I buy it. This is Venkat Subramaniam. Writing code and see it evolve is therapeutic. I buy that too. I mean, therapeutic. You can relax in an onsen or a hot spring and get a massage, right? He's talking about quality here. He's not just throwing something over the wall. He wants to make it beautiful. He wants to make it therapeutic. Great quote. This is going back to 2004, the guy in the middle, Allan Kantrell. Ideas are expressed in code. The implementation is the idea. So don't just talk. If you want to contribute something, you got to talk a little bit, but ultimately you got to write something. You got to build something. The implementation is the idea. You have the discussion on the implementation, not just only at the verbal level. This is my friend Allan Kantrell, also from California. He's a Solaris kernel developer and also a Java engineer. He built a lot of the infrastructure for the Open Solaris project, and of course he used Java. And he says, having your voice listened to is a privilege earned in proportion to the contribution level, not the volume level. Back in Open Solaris, we had a lot of flame wars on the mailing lists. We had hundreds of mailing lists, people yelling at each other and stuff. And the engineers at Sun, they were just looking, who's writing some code here that I can talk to instead of argue with, right? The contribution is that signal. Cuts through the noise. Simon Phipps was a friend of mine in the open source community. It doesn't matter how loud your voice is, code is king. That's the theme. It's a very common expression back then. And this is an image here in Japan. Actually, he's talking a little bit about open sourcing Java like a few months before we did it. The guy in the middle is Stephen Hahn. He's a physicist, a kernel developer at Sun years ago. He says you're always interviewing, and the point was when you're contributing to a community, all the different things that you do to interact and get the contribution, integrated upstream. That is your interview. That's what, whether you're interviewing for a job or you're finding new people, to get involved in terms of contributing more. Essentially it's your resume. Okay, your work is open. Right? Everything I've done has been FOSS and FOSS only. Open source is the way of life. This is my friend LaFred, MySQL engineer and community manager. But he contributes to multiple communities. Multiple. He just lists, I'm talking to him, and he just goes on for endless. He just loves it. Just imagine having that as your perspective. This is Stephen Chin, the guy with the camera. He likes long lenses. You learn by doing, you are what you do. Very simple statement, but for me, it was very, very profound. I used to work for him at Oracle, and I was in marketing. And he pinged me one time, and, he said, you're going to go to Shenzhen, right? Because we were having an event. Our team used to work with the events team, and we would put on the Oracle Code events. Essentially, it was a tour back then. And we used to go like 15, 20 cities around the world. And I was going to go to Shenzhen and do interviews, because I interview people. That's what I do, right? And, it was going to be a 2-day event, big, thousands of people there, the whole bit. And he said, oh, by the way, this executive can't make it, so I need you to be the MC. Like master of ceremonies, right? It's basically run the event, at least during the keynotes. I don't have those skills to stand in front of thousands of people and manage the keynotes and do the announcements and stuff. And I said, I'm just going to go interview developers in the corner. Duke's Corner is in the corner, right? I'm going to be quiet, right? And he said, no, you can do it. And then he split. And so I went to China, and there I am. Now, I wasn't necessarily the best at this, but I did it for 2 hours. There's 800 people in the room. There's equal number actually behind the camera. It streamed out to 600,000 people in China. I'm speaking English, they're Chinese, so I don't know how much actually resonated. But the point is, just do it sometimes, just like the willpower, you're bullying through it. Sometimes that works. It's a part of the process, right? You don't do that for everything. You have to prepare, you have to study, you have to do all these different things, but eventually you just do it. And yeah, I did that, and thanks to Stephen, I did it exactly once. I don't think that's where I'm going to go with my career, but yeah, I did it. And finally, this is up there. I just love the picture. That's all. I don't have anything to say. I just am captivated by that one eye sticking out there. This is Abdel from Google, and I think he's still at Google. This is at JFocus, not far from here in Stockholm in 22. All right, this is finally his freedom. I'm an American. I'm sort of a radical revolutionary, right? And so I view all this stuff, I view contributing as liberation, right? It liberates you. The use of tools. When I was in construction business, that bulldozer was my tool. It liberated me. It gave me something to do that other people could not do, right? Well, you have the same thing. You're using software, right? And so to me, it's the same. It's exactly the same thing. And, you get to go to cool places like this. This is the Java conference, right? It's an unconference. They're in between sessions. They're going out for a surf. But there are many other conferences, unconferences that are like this. Obviously, Kcup is something similar. This was in Hawaii. So my question is, how do you get here? Because conferences like this don't necessarily have, calls for paper. The website's usually rickety. There's just a few pages there. It's kind of hidden. Right, and I've worked in 6 industries. This type of thing happens in multiple industries. It's not just software, right? So the question is, how do you get here? It's really very simple. It's the value proposition earlier. You got to know these guys. That's it, right? You have to know them. And how do you get to know them? Well, you got to learn something. You have to contribute something. You got to study. You got to contribute. Go through that whole process. You got to generate value. Right? That's it. That's the value proposition. So, so when they schedule an event like this, hey, can you come and do, you've been working on this project here to do whatever, would love to hear about it. We're going to do an unconference with just 100 of our friends in some, cool place. Would you come and present? That's it. That's how you do it. So my message is start contributing. This is my friend Bruno Souza. He's known as the Brazil Java man. He's actually one of these guys that knows everybody. He's been around a long time. He was actually involved in Open Solaris at Sun as well, way back. I've known him for a long time. And he's got a book out on career, which talks at length, very, really fat book. It talks at length about all the things you do for your career in software. And a lot of it is based on contributing. And he's a super cool guy. Congratulations, we're done. Almost done. Actually, this is Matias Carlson in Stockholm. And when I met him, first of all, I just love the picture because he's looking right at me here. And I got that neat reflection in the glass. I just think that's cool. But Matias, the JFocus community grew from, that conference grew from a user group, right? Just like here, actually. Some of these Java conferences in Europe here have some real style, some real class, and this is one of them. And obviously, he's looking good there, right? But that reflects the personality of that conference too. Just like, this opening out here reflected this personality. This is fantastic. You really, teach the Americans something. I mean, I'm an American and I love that. We have, actually we have our own swagger, but there's some real style here. So congratulations, Just a reminder, JavaOne is coming back in March, mid-March. The call for papers is open now. It's open till October. We'd love to hear from you. That's my VP, Chad Aramura, and this is the image here is from Las Vegas in 22. And so come to JavaOne. It should be a cool event. JavaOne's great because it's the only place that has all the core JPG engineers together with the core from the community. It's kind of a unique conference. I've been going to JavaOne since 2000. I remember, it's a long time ago. So, and that's it. I'm almost done here. This is a conference here. It's called Kcup in Taiwan. I was just there last month. A lot of students. It was at a university, and a lot of young people. The guy there on my right is it's got to be at least 18. So, if you want the slides with all the links, there's a code there. There's about 50 or so links in the slides, and there's a second QR that we're going to display after this for feedback. I'm told that you can give me feedback. Please be kind. And